Okay, so welcome back to literature. I hope you guys had a good break despite some of the craziness going on. And I hope you had time to read book 8. At the end of this video for today, I'm going to go over the schedule looking forward for like the next month or so. Um, but this video is going to be notes on book 8. I got a little more than like 10 slides to go over. So if you haven't read book 8, you should just come back to this video later. Um, yeah. Okay, so hope you got to it. All right, just to recap book 7 a little bit, we had that incident that kind of sealed the deal in terms of Aeneas being mischaracterized as an invader, basically, when initially he was peaceful. When we saw Iulus or Ascanius, his son, shoot that stag that actually belonged to important people in Latium. And then also, I mean, more importantly, I think it would have come to this regardless of that, is we had Alecto flying around at Juno's behest, stirring up trouble with Amata, Queen Amata, the wife of Latinus, and also Turnus. So in the lower right, you can see her apparently freaking out Turnus. In the lower left, medieval illustrations, we see, I think she's messing with Amata. That's Turnus as well in the middle one. But yeah, apparently medieval illustrators liked to depict Amata, or Alecto rather. Alecto is the, um, the Fury, right? One of the three Furies. She was doing stuff for Juno. And so, yeah, now Aeneas and all his men are basically at war, whether they like it or not. And it partly has to do with his son, but like I said, I mean, I think all of it would have happened regardless of him shooting the deer, since Juno and Alecto were so set on turning Latian people against Aeneas. Okay, here's our first real slide. Yeah, this is kind of more of the recap. On this first page, they mention a couple, like two things that are kind of important, and those are the circled things. Turnus is gathering all sorts of people up and down the Italian peninsula to ally with him against the Trojans. So, like, this is the real deal. There's going to be a big war. We're just in the wind up to this war right now. Um, we will see it actually start to unfold later. But yeah, we're leading up to that, and so I circled Messapus, Ufens, and Mezentius, just so you might want to like write those names down in your notes. They may or may not be important. Mezentius definitely will be important, but we might want to just try to keep an eye on Messapus and Ufens. What a weird name, because there's so many names to keep track of. Those might be a couple worth keeping track of. And then also, apparently, Turnus sends this guy out to Diomedes' city, and this is the Diomedes of the Iliad. Um, at some point, we learn there is another guy with the name Diomedes, but this is our Diomedes, the one responsible for wounding Hera herself during the Trojan War, during his Aristeia. Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier in the semester, but Diomedes resettled in Italy, apparently. According to myth, after the Trojan War, he went to Italy and found like multiple cities, apparently. And, he's a mythological figure, so that's not really like totally a real thing, but it has to do with Greek colonizers settling Italy and settlements wanting to connect their people to basically any given Greek hero, whether it was Diomedes or Hercules, as we'll see in a bit, or Aeneas, um, as is the case with like actual like Rome or Alba Longa. But anyway, so yeah, they're gonna go talk to Diomedes. We'll see what happens with that. Apparently, Diomedes has a settlement that he's in charge of, and they want to seek out his, I guess, assistance or just guidance. Towards the end of this reading, you can see, or let's see, actually, no, it's on this next slide. I'm moving along now. That they just like want to get advice from him, basically. Um, in the middle of this. What does he long to gain? That's Aeneas. If luck is on his side from open warfare, like what does he even want coming here, going to war with what is going to end up being like a big chunk of Italy? So being outnumbered, that might be an issue. Clearly, Diomedes would know better than King Turnus, better than King Latinus. Again, Latinus, he's not into this. He like told Turnus and other people that he thought this was not a good idea, that they were getting riled up. Um, yeah, so he's over it. He's not into it. But Turnus is all about this, and that's illustration I found of Turnus in the lower right, and that's Latinus and Amata on a coin. It's an illustration of a coin that they, I suppose, appeared on. To the left. All right, and so Aeneas has this dream where Tiber comes to him. Okay, Trojans are really good at having personified rivers around. Achilles fights the Xanthus River and the Scamander, and then now Tiber, um, personified in the statuary in the lower center, is coming to Aeneas. And so the Tiber is a real river. You can see to the left. There's a bridge crossing it. If you end up going on the Europe trip this time next year, you will definitely be able to gaze out at the Tiber. We'll probably cross it since I think maybe we're gonna go to Vatican City, and I'll jump back to that slide. But Vatican City is just across the Tiber from Rome. If you look at the kind of middle central part of Italy there, that blue river, it's not labeled on the left picture for some reason, but that's Tiber. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of where they are right now. And they're about to navigate up the Tiber in just a second. But yeah, it is labeled on the one to the far right. This is a really big river for Italy in terms of allowing trade, like naval trade, to access Rome from the Tyrrhenian Sea, which is the Mediterranean. Okay, like the whole idea of Rome being able to participate in this larger world economy is that they're right on the Tiber, which is, they're pretty close to the coast of Italy anyway, but it helps being on the coast of the river. We see that with cities in America like New York and New Orleans being right on the Mississippi. It's basically the Mississippi of Italy, and it goes up towards the Alps there. You might notice the Rubicon is not even labeled on this map because we don't really know where it is. It was like a minor river in Cisalpine Gaul. And Venice is up there at the top of the Adriatic Sea. And that's another place we could end up going on the trip. Or, yeah, I mean, that's like part of the schedule, right? Assuming Italy is able to get through whatever this is. So he comes to Aeneas and he's like, you need to go talk to this guy, Evander. And don't worry, like everything's gonna be fine. You need to pray to Juno. It's like he's like kind of aware that Juno's doing this, but he's like, don't worry about it. Just like make some sacrifices to her, which is a weird idea. I don't think Aeneas could really do anything to fully appease Juno. And also, he mentions this thing about this like big pig. It's a big white pig with like a lot of piglets around it, and that was something that had already been mentioned to them. And I'll be honest, I don't know who exactly said this to Aeneas. There's been so many prophecies at this point, and they're all coming true, obviously. But I think it was like Sybil or maybe his dad in Elysium, who mentioned that this site is it's like we keep seeing this. It's just like a kind of clear indication that Aeneas is like on the right track, and he's like doing what he needs to do for the realization of his fate, to found Rome, the Roman people. And yeah, so he's like, go look for this in the morning. It's kind of unclear if this is happening like in a dream or what. There's always kind of a vague difference there when gods and ghosts are talking to Aeneas. But in the morning, he does go to find these pigs. Okay. Also, something Evander. No, I'm sorry, not Evander yet. Yeah, he tells him about this guy, King Evander, which is good. Apparently, there's this guy in Italy who will not be turned against Aeneas and his people. Let's see. So I'm just going to read that to get my bearings. That lower text. I'll explain in a word or so. Listen closely. On the shores, Arcadians sprung from Pallas, King Evander's comrades marching under his banner. So again, try not to get bogged down in like the plethora of geographic terms. These are Arcadians, but we're probably going to call them um, uh, Palatine people. The town is actually called like Palantum, which the son of King Evander is named Pallas, apparently. And that's on the next slide. I'm going to clear that up on the next slide, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Uh, so yeah, he's like, go talk to King Evander and his son Pallas. The bottom part of this, they wage a relentless war against the Latin people. So he's like, the enemy of your enemy is your friend, basically. Go talk to these people. You can just sail up the Tiber, aka like me, if this is coming from Tiber himself, in a personified form. And yeah, and he's like, he also mentions that Ascanius or Julius will establish Alba as an Alba Longa. That's what this slide's actually about. And this is a historical place. We know this was real to some extent. Um, this place called Alba Longa to the south of Rome. If you look at that map in the lower right, we have Rome on one, like right up there near the Tiber, and then to the southeast of it, we have Alba Longa. Um, so yeah, just a reminder: Aeneas is not actually going to be like the one to found the city Rome. It's just that he's like getting the bloodline there. But his son is going to be the one who actually found or settle this kind of early precedent for Rome, something that is supposed to directly influence actual Rome and like the laying of the actual foundation, and that translates to Long White Town. So yeah, it was on. There's this actual lake still to this day called what is it? Lake Al. I need to look that up. It's like Albanus or something. I'll get back to you. But that's that picture on to the left. Um, and so that's real. We don't know exactly where this Albalong is supposed to be, but there's a vague idea, and that's what that picture is kind of supposed to be depicting. Is that's kind of the general area of where we think Albalonga is supposed to be. That lake is actually pictured on the map as well. Um, okay, and one day we'll figure out the name of that lake. But moving on ahead, they go to Evander pretty quickly. They get back in their boats. They just have like two boats for this little mission. It's not like all the Trojans. But Aeneas and I suppose his son, they head up the Tiber to go find this dude Evander, who they're just hearing about from uh, the Tiber. It's weird to differentiate that he's like a river and also a thing, a person. But yeah, that's Greco-Roman mythology for you. So they come to Evander. That's what that right picture is depicting. And this, I don't know. I shouldn't go into a Lord of the Rings digression, but this has like a Rivendell esque quality. This part of the book that they're seeking out this aid in this like forested um, citadel esque settlement, uh, whilst Saruman, if you will, which is basically Juno, is riling up all these people and manipulating them throughout Italy to turn against them. But they do have some allies, apparently, is what we're finding out. So they come up to Evander, and Evander and all the people are just like in the middle of this ceremonial rite for Hercules, and I'll call him Hercules because this is the Italian conception of Hercules. It's not Heracles. And so, yeah. Um, Good. And then right away, I think it's Pallas who like runs out to like the shore of the river, and he's like, "Who are you guys?" And Aeneas says, upper right, "Tell him this: leading chiefs of Dardania come, pressing to be his friends in arms." In Dardania, dot dot dot. Pallas, awestruck by the famous name, cries out, and he's like, "Whoa!" Like the name means a lot to him. I don't know why I didn't include that text, but he's like, "Okay, come right on in. Like I trust you immediately just by dropping that name." So yeah, I don't know if I made a big enough deal about this Dardanus guy, but hopefully by now you know that this is just some kind of vague figure, ancestral origin of the Trojan people that has been name dropped pretty much since book one. He's supposed to have like originally gone from Italy, then went to Troy. So hopefully you know that name by now. But yeah, it means something to Evander and all of them. And then they start talking to Evander, and they're going to get back to their ceremonial rite for Heracles in a bit. But he stops to talk about how he goes back with the people of Dardanus, and that he actually knew. Uh, he knew. Oh yeah, here it is in that middle text. He knew. Sorry, Priam, and also in Chryses. He's like, yeah, Priam was cool, but one walked taller than all the rest, and Chryses. So he's like basically saying like, oh, I really liked your dad back when I met him when I was like a kid. We'll talk more about Evander in a second, but he is also kind of a settler in Italy who was originally from part of Greece. Okay. Oh, and then apparently his bloodline is actually it overlaps with the bloodline of Dardanus himself in a kind of confusing way that I don't totally get. But it goes back to somehow at some point this guy Atlas, the guy who's supposed to like hold up the entire planet. At least that's how he's depicted in statuary. And in the Heracles portion of his myth or his cameo in Heracles's labors, that apparently Atlas was involved mutually in the bloodline of Dardanus and Evander. Okay, and then we have a digression about Hercules, and that's kind of cool. Um, it's hard to say if Virgil is doing anything specific with this other than just kind of sprinkling in more and more Greek myth. It's kind of a constant exercise of his that he's kind of merging the Greco mythological world with that of the Roman one. Hercules was about as big of a deal in Italy as he was in Greece. He was just, I mean, he basically was the Superman of Greek myth, and that he's kind of like the hero. He's really good at making cameos. If you watch that Hercules video the day before spring break, which was kind of optional for y'all, I talk about how we don't actually have like a surviving epic all about Hercules. So yeah, he's we mostly have him in the form of like popping up in here in Book 8 of Aeneid, or he's in a couple of books of the Argonautica. He hangs out with Jason and the Argonauts for a little while, which is very Justice League esque in a way. And yeah, apparently he is tied to the history of this place, which is called Palentum, right? That's in that note in the bottom. He allegedly helped found Palentum by slaying this dude Cacus, who we'll talk about in a second. Well, like that's what these text boxes are talking about. And so, yeah, again, just like with Diomedes, this is just indicative of the actual reality of colonizers from the part of the world that would have known about Greek myths, wanting to connect their tradition back to a well known Greek figure. And what better one to pick than Hercules? That's like the best name you could attach to a founding myth. Anyway, in the upper right, they start talking about like the reason they're doing this right to Hercules right now is because Hercules did this heroic deed on the way back from slaying Geryon. Geryon was supposed to live in Hesperides, or wait, let's see. Yeah, I guess so. So does he get? I guess he goes back to the Hesperides for the apples. That's weird. But Hesperides, that's supposed to be kind of in Spain, roughly. So it makes sense that Hercules coming back to Greece from roundabout Spain or Portugal. He would have stopped in Italy and done some heroic deeds, including killing this guy Cacus, who in the middle of that upper text box was a hideous part human monster who made his home in the mountain around where Palentum is being settled. Um, and so, yeah, they leave it kind of vague. I picture this guy as like a big weird troll or something, an ogre. But there's multiple statuaries of him where he's like kind of just a dude. Like that statue is just Hercules like wrestling him down. He kind of just looks like a guy. So it kind of surprised me. Anyway, he just goes on. He's like, this is what Hercules did. He like ripped into this cave that Cacus had. He opened it up because Cacus had stolen some sheep from the people who were trying to settle there, and so Hercules like busts through into his little cavern lair in this mountain, and he let's see, this is the one. Laid bare the skies, drags out the ghastly carcass into the light. Yeah, so he kills him and he rescues the cows, and then they go on. They talk about him a little more, and I just love that they reference the cool thing about Hercules wrestling snakes when he was a baby, which the Disney movie is like kind of accurate about. In myth, they're sent by Hera, Whereas in the movie, they're like, I guess it's like Pain and Panic for some reason. It's Hades's minions. We're supposed to be like Ares's minions, but Disney didn't totally get that wrong. And yeah, they just, I don't know. We have like this whole digression about Hercules. It's not super important for Aeneas, other than just kind of giving us this like mythological precedent for what Aeneas is supposed to be doing. Aeneas is not quite, he doesn't quite have the stature of someone like Hercules, but his mission is, we could describe as being Herculean, his mission to found Rome. And yeah, they enumerate some of the labors that we talked about way back on Friday. So that ended up being super relevant. All right, we're almost done, guys, for today at least. And then we get some cool dialogue from Evander. I hope you guys aren't like zoning out for this second part of the poem. I do remember the first time I read Aeneid. I think I guess I preferred the first six books. And yeah, maybe something you have to like come back to appreciate. But I there's actually some like pretty cool stuff here, but it does take some historical like context to fully appreciate it. For one thing, I think it was in the notes, but in case I didn't mention it, Palantum and Pallas, the name of the sun, that would mean more to you if you know that one of the seven hills of Rome was the Palatine Hill. So we have like all of these signifiers of what will eventually be super important to modern day Rome, and we're like seeing them in their like original form. Okay, and yeah, so I like this little bit of dialogue here where Evander is kind of giving us this early history lesson on the Italian peninsula. Um, Starting at the top, these woods the native fauns and nymphs once held, and a breed of mortals sprung from the rugged trunks of oaks. They had no notion of custom, no cultured way of life, knew nothing of yoking oxen, laying away provisions, garnering up their stores. So this is kind of cool. He's like saying, I don't know, that like humanity and civilization got to Italy a little later. It almost sounds like this prelapsarian Eden esque kind of scene, and yet he kind of it's like kind of a almost a bad thing to him because he's saying they're uncultured. They don't know about yoking oxen and like agriculture and like laws and stuff. So it's like this early people. They lived off branches, berries, and acorns. Hunters, a rough cut fare, and then came Saturn, pictured to the middle, down from the heights of heaven, fleeing Jove or Jupiter, right, in arms. Saturn, robbed of his kingdom, exiled. That's kind of important. I mentioned this before, but we saw a statue of Saturn in the palace of Latinus, the Latian people who are now our enemy. Um, and so, yeah, even for Latinus, Saturn is important. Because again, he kind of gets this new identity, this new lease on life in Italy after he has that encounter with Jupiter or Zeus, his son. The whole cannibalizing his children thing didn't quite work out, so he had to like leave Greece basically, since the Greco pantheon or the Greek pantheon rather is actually centered around this location. So, sorry. Where was I? I just I had to get something. But yeah, so he talks about how Saturn came. All these fauns and nature people were hanging out, and then he united these wild people. That line is going straight through that text. All over the hilltops, he gave them laws. He pitched on the name of Latium for the land, so he actually he's responsible for this name. Since he laid hidden within its limits, safe and sound, he was safe in Italy. Like he really did get kicked out of the Greek pantheon by his son. Like he just like had to like get out, and that's why he doesn't really show up. Or I mean, I guess it makes sense and explains why he doesn't show up in Greek stories like after his encounter with Jupiter when Jupiter or Zeus, I guess, rescues all of his siblings from his stomach. Okay, Saturn's reign was an age of gold. This should remind you guys of Ovid's description of the different ages. Men like to say, so peacefully, calm, and kind he ruled his subjects. Ah, but little by little a lesser tarnished age came stealing in, filled with the madness of war, the passion for possessions. So we might look back at a little more of that Metamorphoses part um, next week, to because I think had just started talking about the ages, but they're probably, I suppose, describing the Silver Age, which is when we start to see the gods kind of having a falling out with the men that they recently created, and we have the flood and all that stuff. But anyway, I feel like I'm being really long-winded, but I think it's just because I haven't had a class in over a week. But yeah. Uh, Hopefully you guys are actually taking notes and not just like um, putting this on in the background. Okay, and then this last little thing, and then we're done, is that Evander himself is also coming from Greece. Okay, this is the bottom text part. And I, cast from my country, bound for the ocean's ends, irresistible fortune and inescapable fate have planted me in this place. We don't go too much into why Evander left Greece, but apparently he did. And this is something that is supposed to have happened like 60 plus years before the Trojan War. Um, did I like lose? Where is? Okay, that's the note right there. I'm actually talking about Evander. Evander was said to have brought Greek pantheon, meaning like all the gods, the laws, and the alphabet to Italy. So, of course, again, these are mythological figures. This is prehistory. There might be kernels of truth sprinkled in, but this is the guy who we're blaming on the transmission of so much Greek culture on. Uh, and yeah, I mean, there's some truth to the idea that the Greek alphabet kind of blended with the Etruscan one, and that's how we get the Latin alphabet, which we still have today. It's literally the same alphabet we have today. It's a product of Etruscan and Greek. But also laws, like so he's kind of an echo of Saturn in that he's like bringing culture to the Italian peninsula. And so my point for this slide is just that they are both, Saturn and Evander alike, are precedents for the same thing Aeneas is doing. They're ex-Grecians who are resettling in Italy, and I think there's more significance to that than you might realize. We have other, Diomedes is also in this category. So it's like Virgil kind of like nodding to the fact that, or pointing out that Italy is, I mean, it really did inherit a lot from Greece, apparently in ancient times. Um, and then later on, like the centuries before Virgil's actually writing this, Italy starts emulating Greece in more purposeful ways and like cultural ways. They're trying to copy off of their artistic traditions and stuff like that. But Virgil is positing, and this is historically at least partly true, that even way further back, like at the very beginning of pre-Rome, we have this Greek influence. And that was true. We had Greek colonizers all the way back, even at the end of the Bronze Age, I believe, but definitely the beginning of the Iron One, a couple centuries after the Trojan War. Okay, guys. I'll leave it off there, but we'll talk about the rest of Book 8 on Friday. So if you still haven't read Book 8, definitely finish it. And then there will be a 5-question assessment. That'll probably be the first grade for quarter 4, since Q3 is ending on Friday. And I'll never do weekend homework, but this isn't quite weekend homework because you should have already read Book 8, so you would have nothing else to do. Otherwise. So between now and Monday, it's a huge amount of time, you want to read the first 15-ish pages of Book 9, and that's 266 through 280. I might try to throw it in the forums for this. I guess I will. A link to the PDF. I don't imagine many of you guys would have left your copy of Aeneid, but in case you did, there is a perfectly free and easy to find PDF of the whole dang poem. It's actually Fagel's translation. So that's good. Okay, just a little more about the schedule. This is kind of confusing, but we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. That's when we'll probably have like videos and stuff on most of those days. But since I never like to actually like fully give weekend readings, the readings will be due on Wednesday and Friday, or that's like when I'll talk about them. But they're still kind of due on Tuesday and Thursday, like they always have been this semester. In that on either Tuesday or Thursday every week, like once a week, one of those, and I'll probably give you a heads up. Or I mean, the way the Google Forms are, like you'll just have some time to do this. But homework is due for all classes while we're doing this on Tuesday and Thursday at 8. So on one of those days per week, I'm going to give you the 5 question assessment. And yeah, it's just due at 8 p.m. So yeah, I mean it'd be in the if it's on Tuesday night, it'll be on the form on a Monday form. So you'll be able to like say, oh okay, he's doing an assessment. Now I need to read it, and then you come back and answer the questions. And yeah, that's it for today. Felt like this was really long, but we'll finish up book 8 on Friday, and then we'll get into 9 on next week. And then yeah, we're set to finish the poem at the last week of April, which is going to be online, and then we'll see about May. But we'll have plenty of time in May to read Shakespeare's Julius Caesar very slowly, I guess. And we do have a couple more pages from Metamorphoses. I'll probably throw in some more Metamorphoses. We'll figure out how to distribute Julius Caesar when the time comes, if we need to. And then also my last little thing is, this is getting ahead of myself, but the play was supposed to happen at the end of this month. So if we're not able to reschedule for an assembly in May, knock on wood, I don't know, I have no idea. Then we'll figure something out. I would say, it'll just be like one of the third or fourth assembly of next year, which is kind of a bummer, but it can still happen. But then I know some of you guys might be going to different schools or whatever. I don't know. So if that is the case, if we run into that, then maybe we could figure out something weird where you guys like record yourself doing your lines. I'd have to figure out how to get you props, or I don't know. We'll have extra time in May, so we will figure it out. But if us teachers can figure out how to put videos together, you guys can probably record some MP4s of yourself. I don't know. And then I could edit it together. Anyway, just saying that because I wanted to address that, since that's the only thing I really thought about when I heard that the online stuff is going to last through April. So anyway, I will talk to you guys on Friday. Good luck with your reading, and see you later.